Alright, so Caveman Frank got a major facelift in this update, so today I finally bought this skin. We're going to go over everything they changed about this skin and talk about if it's actually worth picking up or not. Let's get into it. Alright, so as usual, we're going to start with the appearance of the skin, and we're going to work our way from top to bottom. Alright, so instead of Frank having an emo haircut, now he is actually wearing an animal's pelt on his head. This is a saber-toothed tiger. It's got different shades of yellow and brown on it, and it's actually flowing down his back to make like a bit of a cape, and it's also got the arms draped over his shoulder. I think this is a really nice touch, and I think it's definitely more of a caveman vibe than just having purple hair hanging in his face. But speaking of Frank's face, it pretty much remains unchanged here, so we're just gonna move on. Alright, moving on to Caveman Frank's neck piece. Now, he used to wear a green snake that was tied up around his neck like a tie. I understand they were trying to go for a Flintstones vibe here, but it didn't look quite right. I think it was kind of ugly, and I'm glad that they changed it here on this new version of Caveman Frank. This new version has him wearing a tooth around his neck that is tied up on a rope. Now, cavemen used to wear claws and teeth of animals as jewelry, so obviously that's what they took as inspiration here. So I kind of like that reference a little bit better. Plus, it's more subtle, and I think it looks cleaner than the old version, so it is definitely a good update in my opinion. Moving on to Frank's outfit. Now, they kind of kept it more or less the same, but they got rid of the pants, and now he's just wearing an orange toga that's tied together with a rope. I think this is another solid change. It still feels like an animal pelt here, but cavemen probably would not have worn pants, so it didn't really make sense for them to keep the pants on this skin. I also think it's kind of funny that he's wearing a rope as a belt, because that means the pelt didn't fit quite right, but he needed to make it work because that was the only other pelt he had. So yeah, overall, they did a really good job with the redesign of the outfit. There's two things I don't like about it, though. First thing is going to be the super thick patches of hair on Frank's arm. What were they thinking? I didn't know those were hair at first, and when I realized it was hair, I kind of freaked out a little bit. They do not look good. Again, it does make sense that cavemen have hairy arms because they needed to keep the bugs off and stuff like that, but also it's like, why did they make it look like that? And the other thing is, and I don't know why it's like this, but there's a tail coming out of the back of Frank. Why is there a tail coming out the back? It's even coming out of his toga cloth, so like, it looks like it's attached to him. Like, what are we doing? Anyway, the final thing to talk about is going to be Frank's weapon. They replaced his hammer with a giant bone. So now he's got a bone club, and obviously it's like a big femur or whatever from a dinosaur. So, I mean, you don't really got to talk about it too much, but I think it looks cool, and it's obviously thematic for a caveman, so I'm a fan. Yeah, overall, I think they did a really good job with this redesign. I think it looks a lot cleaner. It's a lot less goofy. There's a couple things that I do find very funny, like I said, like the rope belt. I think that's a nice touch. The color palette's also pretty solid. Frank's purple, so you have orange that matches with the purple, and then yellow matches with orange pretty well. So overall, the color palette's pretty solid. Again, the only things I really don't like about this are his super hairy arms and the tail coming out the back. Other than that, though, it's a very solid update for the skin. All right, now we're going to be moving on to animations. Now, for Frank's winning animation, he is going to stomp twice, then he's going to pound his fists together, he's going to reach up into the sky, catch his bone club, pass it to the other hand, and then stand there in his normal stance. And then for Frank's losing animation, he's going to stand there hunched over a little bit, scratching his head. Then he's just going to fall over onto the ground, sitting there sadly. Overall, these animations are pretty good. The winning animation definitely feels like what a caveman would do after he made a good kill or whatever. He stomps around and grunts a little bit. I think that's very much on theme for a caveman. And the losing animation actually has some effort in here. It's not just a one-frame hard cut into something lame. He actually scratches his head and falls over. I do like that. I think it's a very nice touch. And again, feels very much like what a caveman would do. All right, moving on to effects of the skin. Now, first thing I want to note is there are no errors with sound effects as far as I can tell, so the skin actually works properly, so keep that in mind. As far as the main attack for the skin, Frank's going to slam on the ground. It's going to leave a bunch of cracks on the ground as it moves through. And then there's going to be bones strewn about everywhere. And actually, the bones come up in different patterns every time you attack, so that's a very interesting touch on the skin. And they also linger around for a second after the attack is over. I think that's really nice. I really like when attacks have that type of effect that just kind of linger around a bit. I don't know why, but it's just one of the things I look for when I do these skin reviews. Next up for Frank Super, he's also obviously going to slam on the ground. It's again going to leave cracks in the ground, a little bit bigger this time, and it's also going to have much bigger bones coming out of the ground from where he attacked. And at the very end of his attack, there's going to be giant skulls that pop up out of the ground. Unlike the main attack, though, there are no difference in bone patterns every time you use the super. It's going to be the exact same thing. It doesn't really matter in my opinion, but it is something to note. Last thing to note about this skin, Hypercharge does override the skin effects, unfortunately. So if you use your Hypercharge, you're going to have to go back to Frank's regular effects for that short period of time. So as far as the effects go on this skin, I actually kind of like them quite a bit. I do think that bones are obviously very thematic for cavemen, so I don't think it's a bad choice to use bones in the actual attack effects. And there's definitely an argument to be made that the main attack and the super are way too similar. They're basically the exact same effect, but one's just made bigger. And I actually 100% agree with that, but again, I don't think it's that big of a deal. That's basically Frank's main attack in Super anyway, right? The only difference is you get a stun on the Super. So overall, the effects on this skin are pretty okay. They're not the best in the world, but they get the job done, and they're on theme, so I like it. All right, so I showed you guys everything about this skin. I showed you guys the appearance of it. I showed you guys all the animations. I showed you guys all the effects. So is this skin actually worth buying? This is a super rare skin, so it does cost you 79 gems or 2,750 bling, which in my opinion is a very good price point for skins. You get a lot of value at this price point, but does this skin actually hold up to it? Is it worth picking up? As far as comparing it to the old version of the skin, this one obviously clears that. That skin was like horrible. It was one of the worst ones in the game, and it's probably the reason why they decided to update it to make it into this new Caveman Frank, because the old one probably wasn't selling very well, so they probably wanted to try to pick up sales there. But overall, I do think this skin is very solid now. I think the appearance of it is great. I actually really like the fact that like they kind of updated it and made it feel much more caveman-like, like more traditional. But like he's wearing a saber-tooth tiger pelt and it's flowing down his back to make it like a cape, which seems really cool and funny at the exact same time. I really like that overall. Then, like I said, I think the rope tying his toga together is really, like, a nice touch because the pelt was too big, but he needed to make it work. Like I said, I think that was a nice touch. And obviously, the bone club is really cool. I think they did a very good job on the bone club. I didn't really talk about it too much, but it's just a giant bone, and I think it's very thematic for a big caveman like Frank would be. As far as the animations, they actually put a decent amount of work into the animations. Like I said, I think the winning animation is very solid. It feels like what a caveman would do after he beats somebody up or kills an animal or whatever. Stomps around, beats his chest, grunts a little bit, and that's kind of what Frank was doing here more or less. Obviously, he didn't beat his chest, but that would have been great if they did. And then as far as the losing animation, I think they did a pretty good job with that too. Like I said, they often phone in the losing animations, and I normally complain about them here in this video, but they actually did a little bit of a build-up. They could have just hard cut into him sitting on the ground, which would have been very lame. Probably would have complained about it here, but they didn't. They had him scratch his head first, and then he falls over. Just that little bit of, like, you know, build up there made it a lot better in my opinion. So I am a fan of both the losing and the winning animation, so I think they did a very good job on those. And then the effects are the one thing I'm a little bit iffy about. I do like the main attack. Like I said, bones are very thematic, and the fact that you get a different pattern of bones every single time you attack is a nice touch. But like I said, the fact that your hypercharge overrides the effects on your attack, and the fact that the super is kind of like the exact same thing as your main attack, it does feel a little bit lame. Again, it's not the worst thing in the world. There's definitely worse effects in the game on some skins, but it does feel a little bit lazy that they kind of made the super the exact same thing as the main attack, so that does suck. And again, I'm sick of hypercharges overriding skin effects because we spend money on skins and we spend money on hypercharges. Why should the hypercharge just reset you back down to your base skins? So overall, the effects are okay, and like I said, the main attack is very good, but you can definitely make the argument that the super is too similar to the main attack, and they should have added a little bit something else in there. I'm okay with it, though, because it is a bit of a budget skin, so you can't expect the world out of these super rare skins. While it would be nice to have something different, it's not like the end of the world, like I said. So for the most part, I do think this is a pretty solid skin for what it is. Now, obviously, this is always going to be a subjective thing, so if you do not like the skin, you don't have to buy it, and if you do like the skin, then obviously go out and buy it. In my opinion, I think it's pretty good, though, and I do think if you're on the fence about it, I would say you should probably get it because it is a budget option. You can get it for pretty cheap. Again, 2,750 bling or 79 gems. Not a bad price for that. It does check all the boxes according to their skin rarity tier list. It does have animation. You do get a pin with it. I didn't really talk about that much. And then it's got the custom effects and custom model. Unlike something like DJ Frank, which has the normal Frank animations and stuff like that, it's definitely better value than something like that. And obviously something like Spirit Knight Frank is going to give you a lot more bang for your buck. It's going to be a little more flashy, but that's also an epic skin, and it costs nearly twice as much. So, you know, you have to weigh your decision there. But as far as Caveman Frank, they did a pretty good job with it, like I said. Now it's on par with some of the other super rare skins, so I would recommend getting this if you're on the fence about it. Or you could also go for Prehistoric Frank, which is a chroma variation of it, and I don't know if you need to buy Caveman Frank to get it. I had the option to get Caveman Frank or Prehistoric Frank, but that could have been a bug in the catalog, and I decided to just go with the classic version anyway, just to do this review. But Prehistoric Frank does all the same stuff as Caveman Frank, but it's red and yellow as opposed to being yellow and orange. So let me know what you think about Caveman Frank down in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed this skin review. Let me know if you're going to pick this skin up or not. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.